Good evening, everyone. Welcome. This is the Wednesday, June 8th, regular town council meeting. I'll call this meeting to order, and if you join me for the Pledge of Allegiance, please.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Next is roll call. Tody?
Snyder.
Here.
Counselor Anderson.
Here.
Counselor Johnson.
Here.
Counselor Hamel.
Here.
Counselor Katarina.
Here.
And Chairman Clucci.
Here.
All present. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is general public comments. Is anybody here who would like to speak to an item that is not on our agenda this evening? If so, please come up to the podium, state your name and address. And you have 3 minutes. Tom, do we have this? We can make it work. Yes. You're on.
Thank you. My name's Dave Green. I live at 135 Beach Ridge Road. I got a little issue. I'm sorry, it's right after supper time, but you people set the time. You got an issue down to the co-op, okay? You close the bathrooms down there all winter. That's because you can't keep the heat in there, which I understand. But let me tell you what happens down there, okay? I got the pictures right here. If you'd like to see them, it's pretty disgusting, okay? Now, I don't understand why with a harbor committee, a shellfish committee, a marine resource officer, that somebody can't step up the plate and get us a porta potty down there. That would make too much sense, wouldn't it? $150 a month from Blow Brothers right down in Old Orchard. I called them this afternoon. They'll come clean it every week. And I don't know who went down and cleaned up the mess behind there, but thank you, whoever did. I don't know if it was a marine resource officer or not, but it wasn't a pretty sight. All right, now I got another issue for you people. Back November, you were all sitting here, you're just waiting, chomping at the bit for the data to come back from DMR about your shellfish numbers. Well, I'm here to tell you a little surprise. I called the DMR back in April, okay? Because I've asked 3 times from the clerk. I can't even get a response for the previous year's numbers. There are no numbers. The DMR, right from, I'll give you her name, Ari Leach, they do not do data for you people, okay? You either get your shellfish committee to do it or it ain't gonna happen, okay? So you're all sitting here waiting for the data that ain't coming. And it's not coming unless somebody from this town goes and calls DMR and says, would you please figure out the data? Because they don't do it unless there's a request for an increase in license numbers, okay? So now you got all the facts that you didn't get in November, okay? You got blindsided in November, and that's kicking the damn can down the road for another 4 or 5 years, okay? So come November, I'll be back here. It's not a threat, it's just a promise to you, okay? That gives you a whole year to find some data that you're not gonna find. So either abandon it and call it a lost cause, or step up the plate and do something with it, please. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Any other general public comments? Seeing none in person and none online, I'll close public comment. Next is item, would any members of council like to respond to the public comment? Very good. Item 5 is minutes from the May 18th, 2022 regular town council meeting. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved.
Second.
And discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? It's unanimous. Thank you. Adjustments to the agenda, item 6. Does anybody have any suggested or recommended adjustments to the agenda? Seeing none, item 7 is the treasurer's warrants, which I signed immediately before this meeting. And next up is the town manager's report. Tom.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I do have a couple of matters to report. As I've reported to the council in the past, I've had 2 high-level, kind of senior-level positions open. That's Public Works Director and Planning Director. Coincidentally, their last days were officially last Friday, though those recruitments had been well underway. Liam and I have extended that search for both positions, and those positions close June 12th at this point. The numbers, not surprisingly, are lower than I would normally expect and prefer otherwise, but that's really kind of a challenge in this labor market. I am pleased to report that we do have some quality candidates, and so we're anxious to see if there will be some additional ones this week, and we'll move to the interview phase. I think we've got good solid plans in the interim. Stephen Buckley at Public Works has been serving in an interim capacity for a couple of months now, and we've got kind of a team approach down in planning that involves Liam and myself as needed as well. So I'm feeling pretty comfortable in that regard. Just this week, I did learn of a new, another senior level position. Ruth Porter, longtime finance director, will be retiring. 44 years with the town. Just as an aside, when Ruth started with the town, the annual budget was $8 million. And the one you just passed was in excess of 100 million. So she has personally seen the growth of this town over the span of her career. I don't have to remind the council how critical this position is to our operations. So it's really going to be obviously a focal point going forward. And I think we'll be pulling out all the stops, including shameless recruiting as it may be required. So we'll be getting underway. That job description has been looked at. It's not 44 years old, but we will touch it up. Ruth's provided some good input in terms of the credentials that we should be looking for. And I expect by the end of the week, we'll be on the street with that open recruitment. A quick update on the Downs exemption discussion. As I've reported in the past, we've kind of concluded our work, if you will, working within the guidelines that the council previously provided to myself. And we've kind of handed over to the attorneys. I don't know exactly, but I expect it's going to come in probably 2 different documents. One would be a document related to some of the elements involving transfer of land. And then the second would be really the council order, which would be granting the exemption. And I think that will be quite a thorough document, if you will, and that's under draft as we speak. If I had to guess, anticipating the question, I would say by perhaps the end of next week, we'll have a document that's worthy of circulation. And the only thing that we've kind of talked about at leadership level is to kick this off with an open public workshop to really educate and understand what the elements are. Beyond that, I think there's an open discussion, and I think leadership's interested in getting input as to what that should look like over the summer months. Pleased to mention that the AT&T is the new cellular provider on the tower. It's taken longer than they would have expected, but as of today, we were advised that they are live. So AT&T customers in town, I can't promise that you'll see better coverage, but I presume you will. And we are having active conversations with other providers. So things do seem to be picking up in that regard, and I'll continue to keep you updated. Kind of on the softer side, Conscious of the Park will be starting back up. This will be every Thursday night at 6:30 here at Memorial Park. I believe it's starting on Thursday, June 30, and continuing for 6 Thursdays into August. Some of the crowd favorites are back, so look forward to that. And I think everyone's yearning to get back together, so we look forward. Also, in response to some citizen inquiries and council inquiries as well, regarding the condition of Pine Point Beach and our tradition of beach cleaning. Historically, we've done this on a weekly basis, essentially from Memorial Day through Labor Day. And we certainly are budgeting and will continue to do that. In recent years, we've often brought in a second cleaning, really once the water gets warmer and the weather gets warmer in July and August. And we do have resources to do that. This year, interestingly, though, this red algae has shown up much earlier than normal. Typically, it's late July into August. This year, it appeared as early as April, which is kind of strange. I know Councillor Hamilton can personally attest to this, having frequents the beach. It's really a vexing challenge for us. Literally, as soon as we clean the beach, it's the next tide brings the next round in. So it's nearly impossible, but I think to help frame the conversation and understand our options, we are going to be preparing kind of an overview of the financial consequences and also operational challenges that it presents to us. This operation takes no less than 5 personnel to accomplish, particularly during the nesting season, which is a massive undertaking. That's nearly half of our operations crew. And so when they're cleaning the beach, that means they're not doing something else in town. So we're looking at all the options, including contracted labor. And I just want to make sure we all have those resources so we can have open conversations with folks. Because I really don't expect that those inquiries will wane much going forward at this point. And lastly, just housekeeping for council's benefit. Tonight is a strange council meeting night. Typically, you would have met last week. So your next meeting will be a week from tonight on the 15th. And I don't want to steal Councillor Katarina's thunder, but I do expect that we'll have a workshop before that meeting regarding the charter revision conversation. And I suspect she will want to comment further later on. So I just wanted to make sure you're aware that we're going to be meeting back to back, and I expect leadership will get together on Thursday and finalize some of those details. So with that, I'm available for questions.
Go ahead, Tom.
Thanks. Just one comment on the charter. I don't think it's possible to steal thunder from Jean Marie, so, but I would like to say that Liam Gallagher has provided us with a package, with all of the detail that was from the original submission and report out of the charter committee going back to June of last year. So hopefully that'll be helpful to people as we get our feedback to Jean Marie. So I just thought I'd mention that. But I did have one question for Tom and for John, and that has to do with the exemption. My understanding was that the council, in some fashion, preferably in an executive session, would have had an opportunity to find out the exact status of whatever may be coming forward, whether it's in one piece or 2 pieces, before we just see it real time live with the public in a workshop. So that is my question. And I've been kind of advised, well, if you feel there's a need for an executive session, we can do that subsequent to a workshop. So, I am a very vocal person who likes to make errors on the side of public disclosure, but this is one case where I think it puts us at a very serious disadvantage as a council for not having seen or heard virtually any details since this work was commissioned several months ago.
So I can take that. I've given, every time we've met with Tom, the attorneys, or the Downs folks, I've personally called every counselor and given an update. And the consensus that I'm seeing among council is to do this in public. I'm flexible on that. If 4 counselors want to do it behind closed doors initially, I'm open to that. That's not the consensus. That's not the consensus of council right now. And you can all correct me if I'm misreading the situation.
So I'm not going to try to count heads now or, make a motion, but I would say that if that is really the case, then I'm going to extend my apologies to the public beforehand, because I will not have had a chance to review it. And we as a group would not have had a chance to discuss it, in any form whatsoever. The updates have been very, very sparse and anecdotal and not very detailed. So I'm, ready to follow the process and the wishes of the council. But in this particular time, I think it's important for us to get off on the right foot, and I'm really concerned.
Counselor Katarina.
Yeah, I mean, I certainly understand where you're coming from, Counselor Hamel, but, I think it's great that we're gonna get this report and we're gonna have robust discussions out in front of the whole world rather than behind closed doors in an executive session. That's why I'm looking at it. So,
The other thing I'll say is that our conversations have been limited or focused on the general guidance that the council's previously provided. So we'd be foolhardy to have strayed much from that. There are certainly some differences, and you will certainly talk about them. I guess the other thing I would just mention that this is a package, and though it's tempting to reach in and change one element, it often has effects on other ones. And so I think I encourage everyone to view it as in its totality, and that's one of the reasons I think it's important to flesh this out so the details are provided. And I'm certain that you will not all agree on one point or another, but I hope you appreciate it in its entirety.
One final statement I'd like to make is this pattern follows, unfortunately, the pattern that was established in 2018, when for the first time, a CEA was revealed to everyone at the same time. And at that point in time, I remember very clearly the council, with much dismay, admitting the fact that they didn't really know anything about it until the public saw it. So, if that's the process that we're following and the one we thought worked so well, I'll wait to be proven wrong.
Fair enough. I was not on the council in 2018, so I was not privy to that process. I know that you were shortly after, and Councilor Katarina was as well. Go ahead.
So I guess my perspective on how we're kind of approaching this, which is why I'm okay with kind of doing it publicly first, is that I feel like it's how the budget was presented to us, where the town manager and his staff work together. And in this case, we've authorized the town manager to work with the Downs directly. So I view this kind of as the first presentation of the information, which, I would encourage us not to necessarily share direct thoughts at that time, but more as Councilor Clucci and Tom kind of said, like, what's the process we want to follow for how we want to move this forward, which might be an immediate executive session based on the information that's provided. So I think that's kind of how I'm thinking about it. So that's why I'm okay with us moving forward with a public sharing and unveiling to make sure that we and the public are getting that first information firsthand, and then we can kind of do the work as a council, much like we did for budget.
Councilor Johnson.
Yeah. I understand the interest in an executive session, but I'm going to defer to what John just said. We were just in a library real-time discussion with the public, and growth came up, and transparency came up several times. And what better transparency is to have it in the public at the same time we're all seeing it for the first time. And sometimes our public process can be embarrassing, it can be awkward, but it's genuine. And there's no perception of something in the back room with the closed doors, something coming out of it. So I say, let's bring it out in the public, let the chips fall as they go, and define the process. And there'll be several meetings in the public, I'm sure, during this process.
So we've defined the first step of the process. What's the rest of the process? We're just going to figure that out as we go. Is that basically what you're saying? This is directed to Tom.
I mean,
to
that's going to
John.
be a big part of the workshop is how do we want to, what do we want to go through? And I actually agree with John wholeheartedly. I think I view it a lot like the budget process. Yeah, we have a presentation, first reading, but then it's ours. And then it's, whether we pass something or not, or make amendments to it is informed by the public, informed by our discussions and our preferences. And I think it works pretty well.
One final comment. The last time we met was a month ago. So if we're following that type of schedule, moving into the summer season, something's got to change. So I hear the enthusiasm about the desire to do this publicly. I am highly skeptical of our ability to operate effectively, representing the public effectively, and actually having a level of knowledge about this thing that, started, I was 3 or 4 months ago. So I'm just, I'm not a believer, but I'll keep an open mind, but I'm not holding my breath.
I appreciate that. I'm not in a rush. We're not going to force anything through. Moving on, next is order number 22-050, 7 PM public hearing and action on the renewal request for an innkeeper's license from Comfort Inn located at 329 US Route 1, tabled from the May 18th, 2022 Town Council meeting. We had a pretty lengthy discussion on this at our last meeting. I want to invite any members of the, well, first, I guess we can introduce it, and Tom, maybe give an update on some of the meetings you've had in the interim since we last met.
Yeah, I do, please do. I did provide some additional data that perhaps could be helpful and informative to the council. This is kind of a continuation of collecting call data, if you will, calls for service. And we can talk about some of that if that pleases you. Yes, in the interim, since the matter was tabled, there have been discussions, and I'm pleased to report there has been progress made toward compliance with at least the 2 conditions that are recommended by staff. And I can either provide those updates now or once we get into it. But there has been efforts certainly made and meetings held. There is more work to be done. And so that's part of what I hope you consider this evening, is perhaps giving a little more time for the matter to mature and for us to be in a position to render a thoughtful and informed decision as to whether or not the conditions can be met and satisfactorily met. And we're simply not at that position at this point. So perhaps I'll stop there and we can put the matter on the table.
Sounds good. Any members of the public that would like to speak to this item? Before we do, please come on up. Yes, come up, just state your name and address and what you'd like to say.
Jim Gerard, and I live over at the Downs. All right. My concern is recently of the hotel, the comments, and what's going on over there in regards to all the drugs. It's been brought to our attention that there's some heavy duty drugs being passed around in that area. Just last night, I was sitting down with dinner with my wife, and at that point I looked out the window and there was a fellow sitting right there, benches in the Downs. And he was sitting in there, and he didn't look like a very desirable type person, to put it that way. And I looked at him as we were eating. Finally, I went out and I confronted him. I said, "Well, why are you sitting here?" I said, "Do you live in the Downs?" He says, "No." I says, "Then why are you sitting here?" He had no explanation. All through that period of time, all he did was look around like he was examining the entire area. So the point I'm making, or trying to make, is if we can just have some deep concern over this issue. All right. I don't think the people in Scarborough or the people in the Downs or in the general public are in favor of what's going on in there. We need some help. All right. So that's my bottom line. Is I know you're looking into it pretty thoroughly, and any help that you people can give us, we appreciate it. Okay. That's all I have to say.
Thank you, sir. Any other public comment? Seeing none, do I have a motion
Second.
and discussion?
I'd like to get a further update from the town manager.
So perhaps it's best I can start with the data. What we have seen and documented is the call volume has diminished, decreased notably, both in call numbers and I would say in nature of calls. And I did provide that data for you to look at yourself. I see that as certainly a positive sign. It's certainly a sign of improvement. I think there's more improvement that can and should be made. The 2 conditions that the staff has recommended is one, and the council provided some further clarity on this point, is providing on-site services to help support the residents' needs. Many of them are in need of all sorts of support. The council at your last meeting amended that and clarified, I should say, to require an on-site licensed social service coordinator. I'm pleased to report that actually Opportunity Alliance has created a new position that will be dedicated full-time to Comfort Inn. That position is currently being advertised, and they're working through a process to identify a person that doesn't exist yet on staff. That's in part why I suggest that we allow some time for this to mature. So we see that as a very positive sign for sure. The second recommendation, strong recommendation from staff, is that the hotel establishment provide on-site 24/7 security to help, again, provide support and safety for the residents that live there. I know the public safety team who's assembled here tonight has been in fairly frequent contact with the establishment owner, and efforts are underway to actually have a security team on site. The chief is here and can provide more detail, but that's not entirely complete at this point. So again, in process, but trending in the right direction at this point. One of the challenges is that this is a Massachusetts-based security outfit, and Maine law does require that these companies be licensed in Maine, and so there's a licensure process that is they must go through. So that's kind of the update of where things are. And I guess from my perspective, I've seen good attention to the matters. I've seen progress, but we're not quite there yet. It's really the bottom line.
I'd like to follow up on that, Mr. Chair. Sure. It does sound like, and we did table this item, so for the public's knowledge, now everybody's lawyered up. So it's a different ballgame. So it does sound like there has been some progress, and that sounds good. We have 24-hour on-site security, and we have a potential of an on-site coordinator to help with the folks. So that's the folks that live there, okay? And that's fine. But what are we doing about the folks that live outside there that are being affected by this? Did we put in some requirement in there? And I don't have the answer. It's a question. There's been an uptick in, minor crime, theft, things like that. What are we doing to mitigate that? Have anything in place for that? Any ideas? Does the chief have ideas?
I think we're open for suggestions. Our hope and desire is that the on-site security team, though will not eliminate that, will hopefully in part stem some of that activity and stop it from happening in the first place. But I can't sit here and say that that's going to be fail-safe. We're open for additional suggestions and conditions that could be imposed.
Was there any way to maybe, again, maybe the chief can answer, and I'm sure there's some privacy issues in there, but you have a resident that, again, homeless and the asylum seekers, I don't have a problem with in town. It's the crime component, unfortunately, that seems to be kind of focused at the Comfort Inn that's concerned of most of the citizens, definitely me. Is there a way to identify maybe residents that are habitual offenders that we could then have the owner of that establishment evict, for lack of a better term, which I'm sure he has every right to do? Is there any way to do that? Any process to do that?
As the chief confers with his staff, I think there are some confidentiality and privacy issues that do come into play. I do think the establishment owner can put systems in place and know more about their residents, and there is a legal process they can undertake. And you are correct. I believe it is an eviction process because this is temporary housing, so it's not it's not as though Chief Holmquist can have his staff down and remove someone. There's a formal process.
No, the onus is on the owner.
Correct.
I think that's the issue here.
That's what I was going to say, Counselor, is that it is still in the hands of the owner, and we're in hopes that once we get the security company licensed in the state of Maine and practicing, we are intending to have weekly meetings with them to make sure that the two-way conversation and communication is free flowing, so that they provide us with information about people that are problematic down there, that we can try to get out of that establishment. Our only concern is if they're in that controlled environment and then they are taken out of that controlled environment and living outside of the Comfort Inn or anywhere else in town, I don't know if that activity is going to diminish or move to another jurisdiction. That's the only gamble that we take. So, thank you.
Thank you. That's all I have, Don. Thanks for the update.
Sure.
Did you want to say something?
I know, I think Attorney Braun is online and had his hand raised. I'm not sure if you wish to hear from him at this point.
Attorney Braun, just to clarify, is the representation for the Comfort Inn?
Yes.
Sure, I think we'd like to hear what he has to say. Are you still there, Attorney Braun?
Yes, sir. Can you hear me?
We can.
All right, let's see if I can get the video up for you too.
I see your picture anyways.
Oh, there you go. Well, that's a pretty one, so that always helps. Yeah, I thought I had this. Well, look, I'll just go on from here. So, yeah, Attorney Greg Braun, I represent Comfort Inn and Suites, AJ DeHillen, the most recent owner of this fine establishment. And I mean, we all want the same thing here, right? Which is to have a business that's providing a necessary service to the members of the community. And we're working hard to answer and address and rectify any questions or concerns that the general public and you, the council, have related to the current clientele there at the Comfort Inn and Suites. And I think, as the numbers indicate, they've substantially gone down over the last 2 months as far as the 911 calls. That's what we're talking about specifically here, based on a couple of really rudimentary and initial changes in the services that we're providing, which essentially have to do with upgrading, improving the security protocols at the location. We're really we're feeling optimistic as it relates to one of the requests that you made, which was to have an on-site employee, someone who could provide social services to these individuals. There was a question mark as to whether or not any money existed for that position. Certainly the town of Scarborough, doesn't have it in the budget. And thankfully, through some of the work by the Opportunity Alliance and their outreach with the Maine Housing Authority, we've been able to not just create a position for this location, but for another one that the Opportunity Alliance is managing or overseeing as it relates to these short-term in need housing contracts. And so that, believe it or not, is actually a pretty impressive move forward towards addressing some of these concerns. And we hope that within the next week or two, we know that the job has been posted, is being advertised to candidates, that will be able to actually fill that position. And I don't want to get into the significant details, the weeds, as it relates to what kind of calls come in. But I think if you look at it, you'll find that a lot of these aren't necessarily criminal in nature, but rather have to do with social welfare calls or things related to issues that these individuals might be suffering from or through. And being able to fill and provide that on-site staff is going to be a real big help to curing and rectifying all of the problems or concerns I think that the public has. Similarly, I know that the security company, the potential security company for the organization long-term, has met several times with the Scarborough Police Department or the special group that they've set up, related to this issue. We're fully engaged with that. The owner is open and willing in every way to accommodate them. So really all we're asking for and what we think is appropriate is a little bit of additional time so that we can fill this position, which has been newly created, that will allow for a great resource for these individuals, and B, to show that the significant improvement that we've had in these 911 calls as far as going down isn't just a fluke or a momentary snapshot in time, but rather is the new normal for this location. And other than that, we thank you for your consideration and do know that we're all moving and working towards the same outcome.
Thank you, sir. Councilor Katarina.
Yeah, I'm glad to hear that things are in motion. My question to the manager is, how much time are we talking about?
Yes, ma'am. So in consideration and discussion with.
Sorry, Mr. Braun, she was directing her question to the town manager.
Oh, yes, sir.
Thank you.
Yeah, the suggestion would be to your next regular scheduled meeting, which would be July 20.
Because our next meeting is June 15th. Just next
Well-
week. So the regular, okay.
Yeah, there's simply not enough time for them to fill a
Right.
position between now and next Wednesday.
July.
So I think the next opportunity would be your July meeting.
Yeah, just so everybody's aware, I know Tom touched on this, but the applicant has requested that we table this item again to our meeting in July. And based on Tom's comments, he's concurring that with that recommendation, as is staff. I didn't want to, I wanted us to have the discussion about it though. So I want everybody, if you have any other comments or questions or suggestions, please, let's get it out. And then obviously it's an action by council if we do decide to table it. Councilor Anderson.
So what I'm still really worried about right now at this point is we're essentially taking a business that's a core business that's supposed to operate as a hotel and essentially try and ask it to start operating as a homeless shelter. And I don't personally feel like that's our responsibility as a council or as a government to be telling a business how it needs to operate. I look at this as it's a hotel seeking, a license to operate a specific business. And through the data we've seen, they have not been operating as a good business within Scarborough. And I appreciate all of the steps that are being taken to try and make this work. I just worry that we're probably putting a little bit too much time, effort, resources, and there's still a lot of uncertainties about, well, what does this mean long-term? So for me personally, I feel like I would like to vote today on whether or not this is going to move forward or not, really through the lens of what the data that we got up to this point, that this is a hotel, that it's performing bad. It's, essentially in the centroid of our community, close to our schools, close to homes and residences. And it's creating issues around it, not just in the facility itself, which I think is what Councillor Johnson was kind of talking to, that is going to continue to strain our public safety resources, our existing resources. And I just worry that even though I think it's the compassionate thing to do to try and make this work, which I really appreciate, I feel like for the existing residents in the community, they've been pretty clear that this is not a business that they want operating in Scarborough.
We're in discussion right now. I'm sorry. Councilor Katarina.
So I would like to ask the manager if I could. So if we did not renew the comfort, if we say we don't want to move forward this way, then what are the consequences? Because I know, at least in my, I'm not an attorney. I know that this is a short-term housing, so it's my understanding they'd have to go through an eviction process. I mean, that's on the owner and whatever. So I guess what my question is, so say we don't renew the license, what happens to all these people? All at once, boom.
I can't say specifically in the case of the Comfort Inn, but what I can say is other establishments which have supported and provided temporary housing under the EA program have chosen to discontinue that practice, really based on a change in the reimbursement rate from the state. Many of those folks have presented themselves and are eligible for our general assistance support. We have some 35 applications that were at varying stages that we're dealing with through intake. I think it's fair to say that a fair number of these residents, there's 91 at the Comfort Inn, would likely do the same. I think to add to punctuate the point further, there's simply it appears that there's no other place for these folks to go. And that is a problem much larger than ours. It's a regional, if not national problem. And so there's a real dilemma. And to Councilor Anderson's point, I just want to be clear that the town never invited this. It simply happened. There was no permission sought nor granted. To further complicate the kind of legal aspects of this is that our definition of a hotel stay is 186 days or less. And so though the use is certainly not a traditional hotel, I think there's also some challenges in terms of the folks have not exceeded their stay in that regard. And so it does get to be a bit complicated. And I do fear that there's no ready alternative for these folks to go to.
Let's go Councilor Seiler and Hamlin.
So increasingly, I certainly feel more like Councilor Anderson said, that we are trying to facilitate the hotel operating as something other than a hotel in a traditional way. And there license renewal request is for them to operate as a hotel, and that certainly resonates with me. I feel more concretely that maybe that is the appropriate use of our authority. That being said, I think we're in a really bad situation that is only going to get significantly worse. And so I am still supportive of the mitigation efforts that are trying to be implemented. And so I would be in favor of tabling for more time.
Counselor Hamel.
Yeah, I mean, I have to agree. I think that it's clear that the short-term measures are having a positive effect, okay? But it's also apparent that we don't really have a position or a way to address the matter of homelessness, the matter of a homeless shelter. It's still operating as a de facto homeless shelter, okay? And so are a lot of the other hotels that are on that list, even though they may not have 187 calls a year, or whatever the number was. So we've had good experience with commissioning people in town to help take hold of issues like this and become part of the solution. In fact, on June 2nd, I forwarded an email from someone in town who has not really had a reputation for being willing to become part of the solution. Okay, he's been more comfortable with defining problems. Can we really wait a month before we try to develop another prong to our effort that would begin to address the fact that we have de facto homeless shelters that are operating and will continue to operate in town and will continue to be problematic as long as we're not trying to address that. Other towns are dealing with the same thing. It's a problem the municipalities have to come to terms with in some fashion. The state doesn't regulate it. There's no state or federal funding available for it that we're aware of. Doesn't it make sense for us to at least try to make an attempt sometime in the next, it's over a month away, if we're not meeting until July 20, whatever the date is. I know it's summertime and we only want to meet once a month, but that's my question. Is there something else we can do to get a group going on this with some other suggestions and help us to define a policy for what will be decided for us if we don't do something?
Thank you, Counselor. Counselor Johnson.
Well, really based on what the Counselor Hamel just said is we've got to get ready to start getting some ordinances for homeless shelters because this is not going away. If you saw the front page of the Portland Press yesterday, was the Portland mayor begging the governor for help. Okay. So this is not going away. I agree with Mr. Anderson that, I think what's in front of us is a license for an establishment. It's defined as how they're supposed to be used. It's not being used that way. And again, it's the criminal element that is the problem. I would probably support tabling it to give everybody a chance for one more, but I want stricter guidelines. I really want hardcore detailed police reports from this day, from this meeting to the next time we meet. And if we're not so far under that 30 threshold, think about it. We gave the town clerk a threshold of 30 police calls in a month to get a hold of us, or from January to get a hold of us. That's an enormous amount of police calls to one establishment. I'm very liberal. So it should be significantly below 30 the next time we meet. And if it's not, a side question though is, and I don't know if we could maybe ask the attorney, because I think we kicked this down the road and here we are. So the lawyer's up now. We say no now. I'm not a lawyer. I was gonna be a lawyer. My bet is the lawyer immediately files in the Portland court against our decision tonight. And then we're dead in the water. We can't do anything until it goes through the court system. And if anybody's reading the paper lately, the courts are definitely siding on the residents in these establishments. They're not siding on the towns, and they're not siding, because it's the times we live in. This is a national and a state problem that needs to be addressed. So, but I would support a table till the next meeting in July with the expectations of almost a net zero police report. If that's not the case, then we'll deal with it then.
Counselor Katarina and then Anderson.
If I could pose a question to the manager and or the attorney, it's my understanding that the money for this program ends in October, so this is only going through October. It's not like Comfort Inn's gonna always be a homeless shelter. Am I correct?
That's my understanding of the current, and this is federal money that's flowing through Maine Housing, then Opportunity Alliance to the actual establishments. And yes, the current round of funding expires in October.
And
That funding, just as of June 1st, the reimbursement rates were significantly changed and lowered. And again, number of establishments chose to discontinue that practice. The Comfort Inn has chosen, I guess, as a business model to continue, presumably through at least October.
Sure. And if I could, because I mean, I just want to remind people that we're not looking at this staying a homeless shelter for eternity. This is a limited thing. But that being said, I agree with, I think we should table this for a month. I think, what everyone's brought up are legitimate concerns. I mean, if I lived over there, I'd have concerns too about some of what's gone on. But let's give it one more shot, and then see where we're at in July. Because I think if we pull the rug out from everything right now, then we're really going to create more problems for the town in the long run. So
I just have two concerns. First one, just kind of reacting to what Counselor Johnson said in terms of reduction in police calls. Well, I guess, yes, we want to see that. My concern is based on what the lawyer said, and I think what we saw in some of those calls, some of those are welfare needs or ambulance needs because of the activities that are happening there. So I don't personally expect to see a decrease or like a net zero in terms of calls, because I want the people who are there who need the help to get the help. And I hope that if the hotelier is watching, that they are encouraging people to call if they really need an emergency service for whatever reason. I don't want us to have that impact of people not calling because they're afraid that they're going to get kicked out. So that's just one point. The other point, though, that I will say is that, again, my concern about this is that it does set precedent for how we're going to potentially address this going forward. And if we do this with Comfort Inn, what's to prevent us from doing the same thing for the next hotel? Because Opportunity Alliance is going to see Scarborough is allowing these facilities to operate as homeless shelters, essentially, as long as they meet certain requirements. And I don't know if that's necessarily the direction we're trying to go, but that's the direction that could be taken if we spend too much time trying to make this work. So again, that's just where I just feel like this is a hotel. They should be operating as a hotel. While I do agree we need policy and to be talking about homeless shelters, I don't think we should move this one forward in that way. I would rather us kind of take a step back and still do what Counselor Hamel mentioned in terms of what are our policies, what are we going to do, how are we going to do this? Maybe having some of these businesses operate this way is great, but should we look at our zoning to decide where we want that in the community, what makes the most sense? Again, this is in the centroid of our community, right next to everything. And I think, that's concerning to me because it's clearly having an impact outside of just the immediate facility. So if we are tracking things, I would like to see us enhance that perimeter at least a mile, just to make sure, or whatever is appropriate, half a mile, I don't know, but something that just gives us also a good sense of not just within the facility itself, but in the surrounding neighborhood.
So I'm all over the place on this one. As a hotel owner, I'm convinced that this owner doesn't know what he's doing. Okay, to run a hotel, but he's not trying to run a hotel. He's trying to run a homeless shelter. And I'm also convinced that we don't know how to do that. We don't know how to tell him to do that. That having been said, we're in this situation, and the consequences of denial right now opens up a whole nother can of worms that is probably worse than where we are right now. And so I'm bugged by a lot of this too, right? So we have federal money flowing to states, to regions, to hotels, which, okay, great, right? So this federal money helped these hotels survive through the pandemic. And now they're jacking the rates 50%, or they're not, we're kicking people out with what, 1 day notice, 5 days notice. That's not right. So I'm with you, Counselor Hamel. Even though we may not have been at the beginning of the meeting, I
Make
think
a note of this time and date, please. Thank you.
I think we should be trying to find solutions. And you know what? Maybe there's something we can, no, you can't kick them out with 5 days notice. You signed on to this. You're providing housing, that you're not a hotel, whoever you are, whether you're saying you discontinue, you accept the federal rate until you find someplace else for them to live. There may be things that we can do as a council that can help us transition out of this predicament, right? And we're not the only ones in it, but so I'm open to tabling that. That's not, we're here talking about Comfort Inn. It's just one example of what's happening. There's a lot of other things coming down the pike for us as well. So, Councilor Katarina. Are we ready for a motion? Yes.
I will table this until July 20.
Motion's been made. Is there a second?
Second?
Unfortunately, we can't at this point of the proceeding. I'm sorry. With that, we've got a tabling motion that's been seconded. Tony, would you call the roll, please?
Counselor Snyder,
Yes.
Counselor Anderson,
No.
Counselor Johnson,
Yes.
Counselor Katarina,
Yes.
Counselor Hamel,
Yes.
and Chairman Clucci.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you. And I know, I understand your frustration. Sometimes we have public comment at the beginning. Once we enter deliberations, we don't, I know it's frustrating, but we don't have that conversation. And I understand that. And I wasn't trying to make anybody uncomfortable. I thought, given the situation, that we needed to stick to that process. We do have another item right now, though, and if you would like to speak your piece, I'll allow public comment.
Regarding this issue we just spoke about.
Yes,
I just
please.
wanna- I do live in the Downs with my husband. We moved from a safe area in Scarborough to the Downs. And now I feel very unsafe here now. I walk around, I used to walk to the town park and now I avoid it because of Comfort Inn. I see people there that are questionable. I don't know where each of you live. You might live in a safe pocket of Scarborough and you don't feel this. But we lived in a safe place and we moved to this place. We downsized. And I'm sorry we moved in a way because I'm very, very upset about what's going on there. So that's my comment. I thank you for discussing it, but it's a tough issue. I think
Yes.
I don't know where you stand. But whatever.
Come on up.
No, this is so weird. This is my first meeting with
Just
my,
give your name and
oh
address.
yeah, Jermaine Singh, 21 Fairway Drive, Scarborough. It's just more so a concern. Does the hotel motels have become a problem for insurers? We're finding actuarially that hotel motels are the gateway to contributing to sex trafficking. The South Central is actually experiencing this. So it is a serious problem. And I understand the town and the owners at a crossroads, but does the town have a contingency plan for when something goes wrong, like really bad? So that's when we really see change in the space, when something bad happens. So that's something to really think about. It's a tough fight. It's town versus the corporation, but do we have a plan for when something bad happens? Hypothetically, who knows? What if it's a gateway to sex trafficking in our town? Severe ramifications monetarily, property values, mental anguish of our children, the adults that live here. So those are things to think about from a risk management standpoint. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. I think that's the first time somebody's mentioned actuary in one of my council meetings, so thank you.
I saw you perk up in your-
Yeah, I'm like, in a former life. Okay, I'm gonna move on. Order number 22-060, 7 PM public hearing and action on the renewal request for a special amusement permit from the following businesses: American Legion Libby Mitchell, post number 76, located at 40 Manson Libby Road. Bailey's Campground, located at 275 Pine Point Road. Beech Ridge Barn LLC, located at 21 Beech Ridge Road. Black Point Inn located at 510 Black Point Road, Clambake located at 354 Pine Point Road, Cowbell located at 185 US Route 1, Dunstan Tap and Table located at 6 Stewart Drive, Flaherty's Family Farm Incorporated located at 123 Payne Road, Higgins Beach Inn located at 34 Ocean Avenue, Loyal Order of Moose located at 19 Spring Street, Nonesuch River Brewing located at 201 Gorham Road, O'Reilly's Cure located at 264 US Route 1, The Landing at Pine Point located at 353 Pine Point Road, The Greenhouse at Highland Farm located at 109 Highland Avenue, Throttle Car Club located at 10 Dynamic Drive, Scarborough Downs, located at 1 Scarborough Downs. That was a lot. And this is coming from us, to us from the town clerk. Tony, would you like to introduce it?
Just an update, just after we had published the agenda, we were notified that Scarborough Downs is no longer operating. I believe they closed in May, the end of May. So that one can be taken over. Scarborough Downs. So at the time of the notice that went out, we had received 5 emails on the establishments. And as you have been made aware this past few days, we've been receiving a lot of emails for, I believe, some were for Beach Ridge, Bailey's, sorry, and then Highland Avenue Greenhouse. We did send notices out to the abutters when it was originally going to be on the agenda, and then we resent the list again to the abutters for this new day. It's
Okay.
up to the hands of the council.
So we haven't put it on the table yet, and I know Councilor Hamel has a, go ahead.
Thank you very much. This is like an annual thing for us. When we know summer is here, we're doing special amusement permits. So it's just one of the rituals of summer that not everyone looks forward to. But I was going to make a motion to divide the question. There have been 15 applicants for special amusement permits. They're all renewals. So, and there are only 3 of the applicants that have had police calls in the past year. And only one of those 3 that actually had resulted in a warning and violation. So I was going to recommend that we separate that one from the group and otherwise, sorry.
So procedurally, we put it on the table first, and then we split the question, we split it first.
We actually did the public hearing first.
Public hearing, yes.
Right.
And then the table.
Yes.
Yeah, put it on the table, and then we can
That's
split the question. So we can get to that,
Okay,
but we're not there yet.
Hold
I
on to
just
that.
didn't want to forget. That's all.
So with that, I'm going to open the public hearing. If any members of the public would like to speak to this agenda item, please come up to the podium, state your name and address. And if you're online and would like to speak, just raise your hand.
Hello, Duncan Birch, Fairway Drive. I abut the greenhouse at Highland Farm. They're granted a variance to the zoning commission to erect a structure, which was passed by the zoning committee, I believe in 2019. That structure is just basically a vinyl tent. And there were concerns about the noise emanating from there with the stipulation that no loud music after 6 p.m. be emanating from that structure. That hasn't happened. I have 3 young children, and I'm frequently putting them to bed at 7 p.m. listening to Whitney Houston or someone give a speech amplified into my window, and having my daughter asking, you know, they sound really nice. Can we go hang out with them? I understand that the greenhouse at Highland Farm, or Highland Farm as it's colloquially known, is a upstanding member of the community. They do a lot of good. They're a jobs creator. They're historically a member of the community. But there's been a transformation in their business model to holding these live events that have become a persistent nuisance to the community. And that has been echoed by my neighbors who aren't able here to voice these concerns. But we are not opposed to them having different revenue streams, but it needs to be in a harmonious manner, consistent with the spirit of a residential neighborhood, as opposed to what really amounts to a live music venue with a bar where other things can happen, which I think my friend here can elaborate upon, but it is, I'm not one for measuring, but you know, a football field away from my property where we are hearing these things and is disrupting the enjoyment of my property and the tranquility of a residential neighborhood. I'd like to thank you for your time and listening to my comments. I'd like to thank the distinguished members of our public service for being here as well in their service. So thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Just some general concerns. Once again, Jermaine Singh, 21 Fairway. I'm all for, I understand actually that Highland Avenue is a pillar in our community. You folks probably all buy your Christmas trees from them. But they abut our property, and also holistically, if you look at Highland Avenue's farms, they have residential to the west, east, south, and north of them. They're in the heart of residential. My concerns are, who's like responsible for mitigating like the over-serving of liquor at these events? We've all been to weddings. We know we could get rowdy, especially with open bar. What are the liquor liability limits needed? Is the town being named as an additional insured? Is our association in Fairway going to be named as an additional insured? Is there going to be police presence once these venues are over at the end of the night? Some examples of things that could go wrong. I just took some examples today. A third party gets injured by an intoxicated guest / host getting lost on the streets, Fairway Drive, while leaving Highland Avenue Farms. This is concerning because in this example, the town of Scarborough and Fairway Drive would both be brought into the suit. We're in 2022, everyone has lawyers and everyone's suing. So what are the mitigations to prevent over-serving? Second thing, guest / host had a few too many alcoholic beverages and decides to play around and takes out a firearm, either injures himself or others. In the above example, fatalities by firearm can cause severe mental anguish for the people living in Pleasant Hill and also could have monetary impact on the town and its people. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Are there, I see online we have some as well.
Alicia, if you want to unmute yourself, you can speak.
Hi, my name is Alicia Chimulera. I'm a direct abutter at 5 Fairway Drive to the Greenland Highland Ave farm property. Like Duncan and Jermaine, I understand that Highland Farms is an upstanding member of the community, but the weddings have created an environment that as a family with young children, Highland Fairway has 20 kids under the age of 5. I myself have a 1.5 and one expected in the fall. So we have lots of infants on the street, and the 7 p.m. Noise is problematic. So thank you for your time and consideration, but at this juncture, I don't feel that it is an acceptable use of the property for consistent wedding venues. Also, Jerwaine's comment about DUIs, violence, and alcohol consumption is a particular concern. So thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Christine, if you want to unmute yourself, you should be able to speak.
Hi there. I am the owner of the greenhouse at Highland Farm. Am I able to speak to some of the things that were commented
Yes, you
on?
are. Yes, you are.
So when we got our permits to build and to act as an event venue, we were told that there was no amplified music outside after 6. And we also volunteered to end things earlier than our town ordinance of 10 o'clock. So we end very sharply at 9:30, which I take extremely seriously. And I also have a decibel meter in which we do not allow any music at the point of projection to be over 80 decibels, which puts it at about 40 to 45 on the strip of fairway right behind our property. And our closest neighbor is at 173 feet from the corner of the venue. So I know we're also working on that 200, which actually is on Magnolia. It's not on Fairway, but I know that's also something we're working with. So I just want to make it known how seriously we take that, and we do value our neighbors and our community. We've been in the community for almost 75 years now, and of all the things that can happen at a wedding, the thing that actually stresses me out the most is that I don't want to be too loud for our neighbors. But I also need to be able to pay my taxes and afford to live in this town. And that kind of includes diversifying sometimes. You know, and we also are not, we're purposefully not booking as much as we could to allow reprieve for everyone, myself included. So there are purposefully weekends that we're not booking events, even though we could, and probably could book 3 a weekend, but that'll never happen. So I just wanted to kind of make that known that we're hyper aware of things and we are doing things to mitigate. I've also spent thousands and thousands on new acoustic panels this year, and also trees that are being planted to help buffer as well. So we're constantly on the lookout and trying to improve that for everyone's sake. But I just wanted that to be known by everyone.
Thank you, ma'am.
Patricia, if you unmute yourself, you should be able to speak as well.
Can you hear me?
We can.
Okay. My name is Patricia Cole. I live at 31 Snow Road, and it's abutting Bailey's Campground. And I built my house here over 25 years ago. I have never had a problem of the amusements that they've had at Bailey's. I think it's a wonderful place for families to go. Both old and young, they've got things for everybody there. And the noise levels are minimal. They are very conscious of that. I also think that they stop at a very reasonable time. They wanted, was it 9:30 on some? And I have never had a problem with anything that they have done here. And I hope that you would give them that permit, because they only work 5.5 months out of the year. Let them have that.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Any other comment on this item? Seeing none, I'll close the public hearing and entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, we've got a motion and a second. Counselor Hamel, I believe now is the time. If
Thank
you'd like
you.
to split certain items, just identify those, please.
Thank you. I did some back of the envelope analysis, not too deep on this, definitely not actuarial quality, I'll have to admit, but it would, 15 applicants for the special amusement permits. And I read through all the applications. So there, as I mentioned before, there's only 3 of the applicants that have had police calls in the past year. We've heard a lot of comments from Highland Farm. We've heard neighbors. We heard comments about Bailey's. So Bailey's Campground was 6 calls from 3 residents. There was 1 warning and 2 violations. Beach Ridge Barn, 5 calls from 1 resident, no violations. Greenhouse at Highland Farm, 10 calls from 3 residents, no violations. So I was going to propose that we have some discussion around Bailey's Campgrounds and also the email that we got from Galen Bailey that was going to be detailing out the mitigation measures that he's proposed. So I was going to recommend that we split the question to separate Bailey's, but otherwise have the other ones go forward as a group. Otherwise, the choice is to go through all 15 one by one.
That's correct. We can do all 15 at one time, but we can choose to split some up. So you're motioning to split out Bailey's from the group
Yes,
and just Bailey's.
correct.
Okay, so we have a motion made. Is there a second?
Second?
Any discussion? No. Would you call the roll, please?
Counselor Seider,
Yes.
Counselor Anderson,
Yes.
Counselor Johnson,
Yes.
Counselor Katarina,
Yes.
Counselor Hamel,
Yes.
and Chairman Clucci.
Yes,
That's unanimous. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion.
please.
I would like to further divide the question and separate Highland Farms as a separate item.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor? Okay, so are there any other motions that anybody would like to make? So first order, why don't we handle the group of, I believe,
Actually, you have to take the ones that were divided out first.
okay. That's- So let's go with Bailey's first. Discussion on the Bailey's renewal. Counselor Hamel.
Yeah, I offer to do this because I'm a Pine Pointer and I'm not an original settler. So, but Bailey's have been here a long time. You know, the campground has grown over the years. Counselor Johnson and I have spent some time going there to try to deal with good neighbor ordinance issues. I'm very encouraged by the email that was sent by Galen Bailey in which he details actually a curtain they're going to be using to try to muffle the noise. I know there are people mainly on Ross Road. I know we heard some folks from Snow Canning Road, but that's really on the other side of the campground and it's not really where the music faces. Okay, so but even if there's just one person that has a chronic complaint under the good neighbor ordinance, it seems to me that we need to respect their concerns and to somehow address those. I think the police have done a good job of responding to the calls. So I'd be inclined to actually go forward on this, subject to further, see how it goes. Let's see how it goes, see how they do. But I think they've heard the feedback. They've responded in a very responsible way. I think we give it a shot. The one other thing I'd like to say, and I've spent a fair amount of time on this issue, there is a mistaken impression that if you get a special amusement permit, that exempts you from the good neighbor ordinance. That is not true. If in order to obtain that, as I understand it, I stand to be corrected if I have this wrong, but you have to make a special request for a special exemption on the actual special amusement permit. None of the applicants have done that. So I know we're going to hear more about how to implement and how to enforce good neighbor ordinance compliance. We're still searching for more and more good neighbors. And that kind of goes both ways. So that's what I'd like to try to do.
Counselor Johnson.
Yes, ordinance committee has got to pick up our good neighbor policy. I have a question for the chief. If you don't mind, you can probably answer it from right there. You don't have to come up. When you get a call, my understanding is that the person making the call or the complainant, that's the correct terminology, actually then has to fill out this long form about the complaint. Is that correct? You need to get back to me on that when you can. That's what I've been told, which it really is a deterrent to making the call. So if that be the case, I would like to know what we need to do to eliminate that, because I want to make a complaint. I want to make a complaint.
Just recognizing the chief's not been through a summer season yet.
True. Well, I'm just bantering with him. He knows, so I'm not challenging.
I see.
Yeah. A member of your staff.
That's why I said you could get back to me if you needed to.
David Grover, Deputy Chief with the department. A complaint in general, there is no requirement. We take anonymous complaints as well as complaints where somebody, I think what you're referring to is required to fill out a witness statement.
Right.
If it's a situation that we don't witness and we're going to try to prosecute a crime through the courts, then we do require a detailed statement from the
Okay.
person making the complaint.
That makes sense. Thank you. Let me do a follow-up right
Sure.
here then. Are our
Charlie.
officers, are they equipped with any kind of decibel reader or anything? Because I know this would be very subjective, and I do believe in our good neighbor ordinance, there's a decibel threshold. There's not?
Purposely, there's not.
Well,
It
so that is a
becomes
very subjective
unreasonable.
thing then. I mean, one neighbor could say, this is really loud, and the officer gets there, and I know they're reasonable, rational people and go, well, yeah, I can hear it, but it's not louding. But it would be great if then they could measure the decibel level of that complaint for posterity. I don't know. Do our officers carry a decibel thing? Is that an ARPA thing we can do? Hey, it's right out, you got cell phone?
There's an app for that.
I can say when the good neighbor ordinance was discussed and the current version, certainly coming up with empirical ways of measuring sound was a hot part of that conversation. Having served in communities that had such requirements, I can tell you that it's fraught with challenge and problem.
Right.
You need to have proper training, you need to have proper instrumentation and it be properly calibrated. So it's nearly impossible to ensure that we have the training and the resources available when it's needed. Certainly in a
Okay.
court of law. So
I mean, I
there's
look
other-
at that as like trying to do traffic control without a radar gun, but that's okay. Thank you. That's all I have. I mean, I agree with Don Hamill. I read the Galen note. There really sounds like an honest effort here to do something. I think we should really take a look at. My daughter used to live at 10 Ross Road and would go out and build a little fire in the fire pit. I didn't need to go anywhere. I had the entertainment, right? But that was when it was Rick Charette back in the day. It was not, some 14-year-old belting out karaoke at 10 o'clock. So, yeah, I think we'll step back and count on our officers to keep us in the loop and definitely exercise the ordinance. If there's a complaint, write a ticket.
Councilor Anderson.
I think this time last year when this came up, we tabled this specific one because of concerns. And I think last year that was a valid thing to do, but I think knowing that the owner has come to us proactively to share things is showing to me a good faith effort on their part to try and do the best thing that they can to help be a good neighbor within the community. So I think just with that history and knowing, there were issues in the past, they've proactively tried to address them. They've come to us with solutions. I think to me, I'm not as concerned this year as I was last year.
Councilor Seidler.
I can appreciate that the good neighbor ordinance may need a refresh. But I also think that it's a two-way ordinance. And so in this case, to speak to the proactivity of the applicant, putting in some mitigative measures this year, I think that shows a level of commitment to being a good neighbor. And so I'm comfortable moving forward.
Thank you. So, yeah, this one's interesting. I also support moving forward, and I was pleased that Mr. Bailey chose to write us. When I look at where the amphitheater is on their lot, which is huge, it's right next to Ross Road, and it's pointing right at it. So, almost by design, those neighbors are going to be impacted and have been. The fact is, they've ordered some curtains and hired a sound engineer to advise on it. Both permanent curtains that they'll install at the top of the amphitheater that will help the sound from shooting outwards, and then temporary ones that can be opened and closed for some of the other events. That's progress. We didn't get that last year. And I know that we had to issue a couple of violations last summer, and I anticipate that you might get called again this summer and would expect you to respond in the way that our ordinances are written. But I do think that the property is making adjustments and tweaking, and I think it would be unreasonable to have them turn the amphitheater because it's a permanent structure. So I think these are some good steps, and I'm hopeful that the neighbors can work together and get along. So I also support this. With that, we don't have a motion yet. Okay, well, we're done discussion. Do I have a motion to put Bailey's Campground on the
So
floor?
moved.
Second.
Okay. And we'll say discussion is now done. Would you call the roll, please?
Counselor Seider?
Yes.
Counselor Anderson?
Yes, sorry. my mic
Yes.
wasn't on.
Counselor Johnson?
Yes.
Counselor Hamel?
Yes.
Counselor Catarina?
Yes.
And Chairman Tucci?
Yes.
That's unanimous. Thank you.
Next, we also had a motion to split Highland Farm. So I would entertain, I guess, that motion now. Okay.
Second.
And discussion. Counselor Johnson?
Yeah, I heard, if I heard Counselor Hamel right, that there were 10 calls by the police last year at Highland Farms.
Yeah, they had, but let me just restate it. So, yeah, Greenhouse at Highland Farms, they had 10 calls from 3 residents. So there were quite a few calls from one
Yeah.
resident.
I went to the Sedco outfit. It's a very nice venue. It's beautiful, but I tell you, I have a hard time imagining a wedding, not a wedding, but the reception. I've been to a few wedding receptions. This is all outdoors and it's all exposed, and it's right in the middle. It is east, west, north, probably north and south. So I'm without an adjustment to the hours on this application, I'm not going to support it.
But you're not motioning to adjust the hours right now.
I was waiting for further discussion. I can
Okay.
come over the top with an adjustment.
Very good. So let's continue discussion. Anybody else about Highland Farm? Counselor Seider and then Anderson.
Sure. So I have 4 young kids. I certainly am sympathetic to trying to put kids to bed and having the outside world be way more interesting than what you're trying to achieve. I also appreciate the neighborhood aspect that you all share, that this is a lovely community for your children to participate in, and that Highland Farms really is central to that neighborhood. I'm a lifer here. My parents live on Pleasant Hill Road. I don't get my Christmas tree there, sorry guys, but I cut my own. But I can also appreciate the longevity of the business. This is a difficult one in the sense that when people had an idea of what it was going to be like to live in that neighborhood, they probably never envisioned a wedding venue. And so that's hard. That being said, we have ordinances in place that prevent us from disrupting each other and our enjoyment of our own yards. And there are time constraints around those. I'm sorry, I'm not being very articulate at all. But there are time constraints in place. As Councillor Hamel mentioned, no one is asking, and Highland Farm in particular is not asking for an exemption to the Good Neighbor Ordinance. And so for those reasons, I think I'm supportive of them continuing and asking for this special amusement permit.
Counselor Anderson.
So, the fact that we had so many residents come tonight sharing concerns, and then even had the owner come and kind of offer some solutions, I would maybe, rather than voting no tonight, maybe even potentially suggest that we table the specific one and allow the owner and the neighbors to have more of a conversation, which perhaps we can find a way to help facilitate that, to just see if there are other solutions or things that we can bring to that neighborhood to help them. Again, like I agree with everything that Councillor Seider said. I would just hope that we can help the community members and the business owner find, maybe a middle ground or something else, that rather than just trying to straight amend the motion tonight, to see if there's something that we could come together as a community on.
Counselor Hamel.
Yeah, I'm inclined to approve this one, to let this one go forward. It does seem that if I heard the issues that were raised by the abutters, by the neighbors, there were no violations last year, in spite calls, there weren't, so it does seem to me that they deserve at least a chance to give it a try. And then if it doesn't work, we'll be in a different place, you know, in terms of citations and police calls. But it, you know, I listened to the owner and I recall they were here previously for some other business. You know, I'm inclined to give them a chance, you know, to work through it with their neighbors.
Counselor Katarina.
Yeah, I remember this came through their original requests couple of years ago, I guess it was right before COVID, if I'm remembering. But anyway, that being said, so this venue was fully vetted at that time. I think, don't forget, we also had people who sent us emails in support of this venue. So, you know, it is one of those difficult ones. It's like having the neighborhood bar in the middle of a residential neighborhood, so to speak. And, you know, it is an agricultural use of that particular place. We do allow for other agricultural places to have wedding venues and barns and whatnot. But that being said, I do feel very strongly, and I would continue to encourage the owners to work with the neighbors regarding, you know, noise mitigation. The owner mentioned they were doing plantings around, and maybe Christine could talk to Bailey's, find out who they've used and what are they doing down there too. I don't know, but I'm going to support them continuing with this license. So.
Thank you, Counselor. I agree. I think that touch point, you know, hiring a sound engineer is probably advisable. I don't know that plantings are going to do much for sound. 90% air, it's going to go through it. But there are a lot of techniques that you can use to mitigate the impact on the neighbors. If my memory serves me correctly, we attempted to deny Bailey's last year, but because they hadn't actually been found in violation of the good neighbor ordinance, we didn't have standing to do so. And I think we're in a similar situation with this one. And given that they have not been issued a violation of our ordinances, I don't think we'd have much water to stand on. That having been said, I'm encouraged to hear that the owners want to work with the neighbors and want to make an impact. And I think I'm hopeful that the neighbors can also work with them. You know, I think we did this last year with Bailey's, instructing the police department, you know, we're not offering an exemption with this approval to the good neighbor ordinance. So, you know, you should be treating violations to the good neighbor ordinance as a violation. And if it comes back to us in a year with a violation, then we do have standing to deny a request. With that, seeing no other motions.
Might as well not do it just in time, right? Come on.
You can
I'll
motion.
pass. No, I don't want to get a.
If you
double
correct
loss.
me, if there's, yeah, go ahead.
I would like to motion that we table this to next week, just to allow time for the owner and the neighbors to hopefully have a conversation and then revisit this next week.
Motion's been made. Is there a second? See none. Motion fails.
Nice try.
Now we're back to the main motion as was not amended. Would you call the roll, please, Tony?
Counselor Seider,
Yes.
Counselor Anderson,
Yes.
Counselor Johnson,
No.
Counselor Katarina,
Yes.
Counselor Hamel,
Yes.
and Chairman Clucci.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you all for coming, guys.
Now we got to do the big one. You got to do
We-
the whole big.
Yes, we have balance. Let's get through one more and then we can take a break. So we have the remainder of the special amusement permit applications now as a batch that we're going to entertain. And then we'll take a brief recess. So do I have a motion?
This one on the floor.
This is the one on the floor. We're back. Thank you, Tony. I'd be lost. Okay, so this one's on the floor. Is there any discussion about the remainder? Counselor Johnson.
Just as a suggestion, Tony, not if, you know, I definitely understand the efficiencies of batching them up, but maybe as a thought for the future that we can really box up the indoor and the outdoor as separate batches, maybe possibly as a thought.
Thank you.
No other discussion.
Any other discussion? Counselor Hamel.
Maybe what we're finding here is through our efforts at deliberating is that the missing ingredient in the good neighbor ordinance was finding good neighbors to try to work together to get this stuff sorted out. You know, I don't know whether it's going to require an ordinance change to do that, but maybe that's something we're learning, hopefully.
Yeah, I actually think this is it working, is you're bringing people out, you're getting people to have conversations and finding how we can all, kind of survive next to each other. So you're never gonna, you start to make it too scientific and it doesn't work. I've tried, I've been on, I had babies too. They were getting kept up by live music. Seeing no other discussion, Tony, would you call the roll, please?
Counselor Seither?
Yes.
Counselor Anderson?
Yes.
Counselor Johnson?
Yes.
Counselor Katarina?
Yes.
Counselor Hamel?
Yes.
And Chairman Pritchett?
Yes.
Thank you.
With that, we're gonna take a 5-minute recess, regroup at 8:42.
I know. It's long.
the Celtics game on the not too distant
I'm the only one that
future.
cares about it.
I do too, actually. Okay, so order number 22, welcome back. Thank you. Order number 22-061 is a 7 PM public hearing and action on the new request for a liquor license from Daniel Mays doing business as Frith Farm LLC located at 61 Ashwamp Road.
As it notes, it is a new request. Mr. Mays is looking to hold farm-to-table dinners throughout the summer. And he would like to be able to serve alcohol with those. I believe it's wine and beer. he's looking at.
If I could, I know the council did receive a communication from the zoning administrator this afternoon. Though he raises some excellent points, I think it was somewhat uninformed. There is an existing food handler's license on premises. Our fire department and code office has been there to inspect. So many of the issues that he raises, I don't think are appropriate. So we don't see any reason not to consider and frankly grant this this evening.
Okay, thank you for that. Are there any members of the public that would like to speak to this item? Seeing none in person and none online, we'll close the public hearing and do I have a motion
So moved.
Second.
and discussion. Seeing none, Tony, would you call the roll?
Council Seither?
Yes.
Council Anderson?
Yes.
Council Johnson?
Yes.
Council Caterina?
Yes.
Council Hamel?
Yes.
And Chairman Clucci?
Yes.
That's unanimous. Thank you.
Order number 22-062, a 7 PM public hearing and action on the new request for a combined massage establishment, massage therapist license from Gina French doing business as Scarborough Pilates located at 152 US Route 1.
This is a standard process for this application to come forward. Everything is in order and we recommend it.
Okay. Any members of the public that would like to speak to this? Seeing none, I'll close the public hearing and can I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor? It's unanimous. Thank you. And finally, order 20-063 is a 7 PM public hearing and action on the new request for a food handler's license from Christine Arcadillion doing business as Seacatcher Art Studio and Gifts located at 55 Bayview Avenue. This was a late change, but this has been withdrawn by the applicant, so no action is needed. There's no old business. New business is order number 22-064, first reading and schedule a public hearing on the proposed amendment to chapter 311, schedule of fees to change the reference to chapter 500, trailer and trailer camp, to chapter 1019, the Town of Scarborough Manufacturing Housing Community Licensing Ordinance.
Yes, our former town planner, Jay Chase, brought this to my attention in that in chapter 311, it's noted that we referenced chapter 500, which is before the council for consideration to be repealed. And just updating the chapter 311 to reflect the 1019, the Town of Scarborough Manufactured Housing Community Licensing Ordinance. And this will flow with the same in line with the other three ordinances that the councils are considering.
Thank you. Any members of the public that would like to speak to this? Seeing none, do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Discussion? Counselor Johnson?
I may be confused on this, so forgive me. Is this the fees, the actual fees associated with that, with the establishments? I was contacted by Mr. Foss this morning that there was a discrepancy in the fees, I think, on the schedule, and are there fees in the ordinance that's in front of the planning board? One says 110 and the other says 200. So where would those be? Where would we have two different fees?
110 is noted on her application, and that was in our error. We should have been charging the fees that are in the schedule of fees of chapter 311.
Okay, did we inform her that it was our error?
Truthfully, I just note, Jay brought it to my attention when he brought the
Oh,
the other
okay.
information.
We will formally communicate. We're not proposing any change to the
Right.
fees. I
No,
think we
we're
just
not changing.
incorrectly advised her what the fee was.
Okay,
Okay.
so there's no changing the fees. It's
No.
just reallocating where the fees are
No.
understood to be
Well, no, no,
categorized.
no.
Okay,
No, it's just simply referencing, previously it referenced chapter 500, which you are discontinuing altogether. And so it's just providing the proper citation.
Right.
No other change.
1019.
Correct.
And it was a catch that Jay pointed out when we had the first reading on the other changes in the last meeting.
Yeah.
Any other discussion?
I guess I'm too late.
Would you like to speak to this item now? Please come up.
Well, my only concern is you look at the ordinance, the zoning ordinance, and my question is, why change the wording? Because it looks to me like the manufacturing housing community could build a trailer park, basically, anywhere that there is single-family housing. If you look at the ordinance and the changes that were to be made. And that was just a concern of mine, that whether that is going to be something that people would really like. So my question too is, what is the reason for the change from trailer park to a manufacturing housing community? Sounds like the same thing. So that's, thank you very much.
Sure.
I can
Counselor
answer the second part of the question. The first part I don't have an answer to, so.
I can take a stab at the first
Great,
part.
thanks.
But, well, so for the first part, this change is just about a reference to the fees that manufactured housing community, or what was formerly called I think a trailer camp, would apply to the town to be able to operate what we're now calling a manufactured housing community, which was formerly called the trailer park or trailer camp, and a couple of other terms that are now not viewed as very favorably, I guess. They're considered derogatory, which is why a big part of the reason why we're updating the language.
That's
Did I cover both? Sorry.
all it is.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Yes. Would you call the roll, please?
Yes. Counselor Seider,
Yes.
Counselor Anderson,
Yes.
Counselor Johnson,
Yes.
Counselor Katarina,
Yes.
Counselor Hamel.
Yes.
and Chairman Clucci.
Yes.
Thank you. That's unanimous.
Next is order number 22-065, first reading and scheduled public hearing and second reading on the new request for a marijuana establishment license for Shannon's Best Buds doing business as Secret Stash Cannabis Company for an adult marijuana cultivation facility located at 10 Snow Canning Road, Unit 14. Liam.
So this is a request for a new adult use license. It takes over a space that was previously licensed for medical cultivation. So again, no expansion of footprint at the Snow Canning Road facility. It has been inspected by staff. There are absolutely no concerns. So it's a pretty good revamp, especially for that facility. Looks good.
Thank you. Any members of the public that would like to speak to this? Seeing none, do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor? It's unanimous. Thank you. Next is order 22-066, first reading and schedule a second reading to approve the expenditure in an amount not to exceed $210,000 from the Land Acquisition Reserve Fund for the purpose of purchasing property at 380 Payne Road, identified by the Scarborough Tax Assessor's map R038/Lot 7, as recommended by the Parks and Conservation Land Board, and authorize the town manager to execute any and all documents as necessary to protect the town's interest. This is coming to us from the Parks and Land Conservation Board. And I believe we have Ms. Foley Ferguson to introduce it.
Correct. Thank you. Just as an aside, that's about the longest permit process I've ever seen you guys go through. But I live across from Camp Ketcha. They do weddings, and it's all about the bass. Boom, 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 boom. Okay, I'm just saying. I had to say that. So when we first started conserving land with in Scarborough, I was pregnant and on the town council, and my daughter's now a junior in college and she's 21. So that's how long ago this restarted. So what I presented to you guys in that package is a little bit of a history, just so that you know because some people weren't on the council or aware of it, that there's been 4 referendums totaling 7.5 million, and then what they were and what the votes were and that sort of thing. I also, when we started, we didn't really have any staff, and I don't know how, but this new year, I'm really appreciative of having Micah Warnock, the GIS person, and then also Todd Souza from the Recreation Department working with us. So I don't know if that was Tom that I need to thank for that, or if it was the town council and your committees or whatever, but it has made a real difference, and it's going to be great going forward because we're moving into high-tech stuff now. So thank you for that. Andrew Mackey is here. He's from the Scarborough Land Trust. So if you have really specific questions about the property, you can speak with him. So just before I get into the details of it, a lot has changed in the last 3 years, to the point, pandemic prices of real estate, to the point where there's not even appraisals, and then things are selling for, way more than what they are being listed as. And I'm sure Counselor Katerina knows all about it. And quick closings, fast. Everything's going.
But there
And-
are appraisals. You need to know.
There are appraisers. Yes, there are.
Appraisals.
Oh, and there are appraisals, yes. And, but in land conservation in this arena, what else has changed is that matching grants have sort of dwindled a little bit. And what's happened is larger parcels are being funded more than the smaller parcels. And in Scarborough, of course, we don't have that many large parcels anymore because of the growth that's happening here. So we have all of this combining, this storm combining. The Land for Maine's Future recently approved 20 projects, and 16 of the 20 projects were greater than 50 acres. Only 4 of them were under 50 acres. So that kind of gives you an idea of where the money is. And then in terms of the prices in Scarborough, things are also very, very high, both in the business properties and also residential. So that's kind of just the history about about what's been going on recently. This particular project is located, can you go to the map of the 8 Corners corridor? Yeah, that's a good one right there. I don't know if we don't have a little pointer here, do we? But if you can see, yeah, because I can't point to it, but there's, this parcel sits right, you see where the red, yeah, there you go. Those 2 parcels were purchased by the land trust prior to this one coming available. And this one is, even though it's a 9.5 acre parcel, you see how it's a really important puzzle piece of the entire acreage. It fits right into it. It's about 45% wetland, but that doesn't mean it's not valuable for wildlife habitat. In fact, if you go to the next map, it shows, how valuable the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service habitat project, they list the top 25% habitats, and they put them in a special category. And this parcel is part of that. So even though this parcel is expensive for 9.5, it's actually right adjacent. You have to look at it in terms of what the entire package is and what it does. It fills that piece. It's kind of a rare opportunity to acquire that piece of the puzzle. It's not right now, it hasn't been recently appraised, but I think the appraisal is coming up soon, shortly. And I'm not exactly sure when, but the value of this property is defined by understanding the whole threat of a development in the commercial zone, as well as in the Nonsuch River, because the Nonsuch River encompasses the entire of Scarborough, and it feeds into the Scarborough Marsh. And this property does have a little perennial stream that feeds into the Nonsuch River. based on our estimates, like I said, 45% of the property is considered in the top 25% of the trust species, wildlife trust species. But in order to know for sure what's there, if you look at the map that's shown right now, we can't for sure say, are there endangered species, a ton of endangered species there, but that is the habitat they think, and in the past they have been. So it's a valuable property that way as well. It's a huge addition to the whole Warren Woods property. I don't have too much else except to say that we evaluated it, but we did not do, I know on your agenda, it says that we did a site walk. We didn't do a site walk on this. It's one of the few that we haven't done a site walk. And that's because we know it's a really valuable piece and we didn't really need to waste our time doing it because of that. It rated 361 points, and that's relative to some of these other properties that are less acreage. So the main natural areas it's also noted as an exemplary community, and in the beginning with habitat maps of rare plants and natural communities. And you saw that it's possible that the little brown bat is there, spotted turtle. We know that there's turtles actually now because after they first came to, I think Andrew went out and identified the fact that there is definitely turtles over there. So I don't know if you have any questions, but we recommend full approval of this. And the only thing I would say is this is the very first time we're making a recommendation without an appraisal. And that's, something that you folks have to sort of wrestle with. We made a note of it in our recommendation. And you just have to wrestle with what, if you want to fund it entirely now or wait for the appraisal, but this is due to close July 29th, I believe. Is that still? Yeah.
Thank you for that introduction.
You're welcome.
I just had a question for Tony. I noticed this one's coming to us as a first reading and schedule a second reading with no public hearing. Is that just standard because of the type of request? Okay, thank you. Any questions for Ms. Ferguson? No? Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
And discussion? Councilor Caterina.
I think this is money well spent. Land values in Scarborough are outrageously high. This is not bad at all. So my recommendation is let's do it.
Great. Councilor Anderson.
Yeah, I'm supportive of this as well. And I don't know if we've extended a formal invite, but next week we're doing our next Counselor Corner Live. And the focus is on conservation and sustainability. Getting data like this for me is like really helpful. And I hope you can make it and share some of this or be there as an expert as well as the land trust. I think you guys participated in our last one. And that actually was what prompted, I think, this particular conversation. So thank you for doing this, and hopefully you guys can participate next Thursday at 6:30.
Councilor Johnson, did you have?
This is just the first reading, correct?
Correct.
All right, and the appraisal should be coming shortly, you said?
So the appraisal is under contract. We expect it, well, has to be in by the end of this month. We're hoping for it earlier. And we will not close, we can't proceed if the appraisal doesn't support the purchase price.
Okay. Okay.
That, and it's written into our purchase and sale agreement. If we don't have an appraisal that supports it, we can walk away from the deal.
Councilor Hamilton.
Yeah, I'm in support of this. This is good work. This is an important strategic, tenet of our comprehensive plan. It's going to help us to balance out the pace of growth and development. And preserving these wetlands, I think is also important for a lot of environmental reasons. And also, if you think about Payne Road, it's going to be pretty well heavily built out as a commercial space. So having, this nice swath along the Nonsuch River preserved and also part of the, contiguous with the Warren Woods Preserve, I think this is all, it's all really good work and good idea. Thanks.
Thank you. Yeah, I fully support this as well. In looking at the map, the progress that you've made over the past, well, it's 20 years, maybe more, is impressive. You've got, between Warren Woods, the Libby property that, you recently acquired or put under contract, the two that you bought on your own, which is fantastic, that are adjacent to this one, but it's literally hundreds of acres now. It's contiguous. It's in the core, at the heart of Scarborough. And it's close to where, our growth area is. So you're protecting a buffer around it. I just think it shows good vision. It's smart. I'm happy that you're able to do what you're doing and look forward to more. Tony, would you call the roll, please?
Snyder,
Yes.
Counselor Anderson,
Yes.
Counselor Johnson.
Yes.
Counselor Caterino.
Yes.
Counselor Hamel.
Yes.
And Chairman Clucci.
Yes.
That's unanimous. Thank you.
Next is order 22-067, act on the request to extend the building lease for community services for 3 additional years by directing and authorizing the town manager to execute a renewal lease agreement for the property located at 418 Payne Road. Tom, would you like to introduce this one?
Yes, this matter did come up before the Finance Committee. There is funding in the FY23 budget to fund the first year of this extension. At the time, we did have some rudimentary conversation that there needs to be a formal extension and renewal of the lease. In conversation with the landlord, the property has been actively marketed during our tenancy. And frankly, they're looking for some certainty and stability, if you will. And so they were looking for a bit longer term than we initially started with. And what we arrived at was a 3-year term. I'm pleased to report that I was able to modify the lease terms, the actual annual rent slightly. So they've agreed to hold the rent at its current rate, for the first year of the extension, and then increase by 2.5% for years 2 and 3. Saves a little bit of money, if you will. We remain emphatic that this is not a long-term solution for community services, but I've been very impressed with what Todd Souza and his staff have been able to do, just given limited space that's not designed and not ideal by any stretch, but if that's an indication of what they're capable of, I'm really encouraged. And frankly, I think our residents have come to really appreciate a lot of that expanded programming. So I do recommend that we approve this. Again, you please put this in the minutes. We have no intention in coming back to you with interest in purchasing this property, but we do see it as providing a bridge to something else. That something else may be taking over a discontinued school, if that materializes, or building a new facility. Those are conversations that will need to be had. And we've got a couple of conversations that have started, and I think will continue over the next several months and years to help flesh this out further. But this really buys us time for that longer term, better solution.
Thank you, Tom. Any questions, clarifying questions? No. Okay. Any members of the public that would like to speak to this? Seeing none. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
And discussion? Councilor Anderson.
So I am supportive of this tonight. However, I've been doing a bad job as a liaison to the Rec Advisory Board. And when this got on the agenda, I shared it with them, and some members wanted to have the opportunity to discuss it at the board before it came to the council for a recommendation. So I just want to honor that request and ask that we table this until July 20th.
Are you motioning?
I'm motioning that we table this until
Okay,
July 20th.
we have a motion to table until July 20th. Is there a second?
I second that.
Okay, motion to table has been seconded. Tony, would you call the roll, please?
Counselor Snyder,
No.
Counselor Anderson,
Yes.
Counselor Caterina,
No.
Counselor Hamel,
Yes.
Counselor Johnson,
No.
and Chairman Clucci.
No. So motion fails.
Motion fails.
So we're back to discussion. Yep. Counselor Johnson.
You've already had your turn. Well, since the town manager asked the town clerk to put into the minutes that we will have no intention of purchasing the property, I'd like to extend those minutes to have an exit plan by year 2 of this lease, because pretty disappointed that we don't have an exit plan after year 1. This was really a surprise to me. I expressed it during the budget, so I won't express it again, but I think 2 years is more than enough time for a community service director to have a plan to either find a permanent home or move back into the home office. Because that's what I was told today, got to move back into the home office. So that was really a gist about getting in the minutes. Tony said, don't put it in the minutes, but maybe as a point of discussion. Don't you think it's responsible to have an exit plan on a 3-year lease? Or what we'll do is 3 years from now, nobody on this council will be here, and there's an opportunity just to extend the lease if somebody has not put in the effort to have an exit plan.
I don't usually, I just want to, our top priority this year was putting some emphasis on a community center. We funded that work.
Yep.
That's our I mean, that's the plan. If it doesn't work out, then you got to go to plan B or C.
Plan B or C.
Yeah, but it's in process. So that work is in process, but it's not going to happen overnight. Sorry. Counselor Hamel and then Katarina.
I let Jean Marie go first.
Okay.
Jeez. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I think that this makes all the sense in the world. I think they've done a great job with using this building as an interim while we work as a council to move forward on what are we doing, with a community center, or, what are we doing in the future? If we were to move back to this building, you would see a cutback in programming because there's no place to put some of the programming. So I think this is a great idea. And I mean, I don't disagree with my fellow counselor Johnson that we don't want to keep this in perpetuity. I mean, but that, I know that's not the plan. But I'm happy to move this forward for 3 years at this point. So I will support this.
Counselor Hamel.
Yeah, I don't like this in so many ways. And I'll tell you the number one thing I don't like about it. The last minute request, oh, let's see what the net increase is of the original number. Oh, it's $360,000, 412 cents. Whoa, well, that's curiously close to 400,000, isn't it? So I think we should be treating decisions like this like capital leases. We have no plan. We're just lurching forward. I admire what was done in a crisis, as particularly with offering the services for daycare. That was admirable. It was heroic, in fact. But it was done as a short-term measure, and this is a perfect example of short-term thinking. You already have 3 people who are complaining about it in one way or another. I think this is just no way to do business. And sooner or later, this money ends up being a huge figure. And we went through the process of talking about this during the department reviews. We raised questions about whether or not this is a break-even proposition. It is not. It is not a break-even proposition. There's no plan. There's no business plan for how we're going to expand this. And I thought it was a land grab in the first place that we put the staff there. I'm really unhappy with this. And I think we have a pattern of doing this kind of thing at the last minute. We get shoehorned into making a decision. We'll say, well, it's not great, but we'll just do it anyway. We got to come to the end of this. I'm the only thing that's the saving grace about it, it's happening at 9:15 and not many people are watching to have to listen to me. So I cannot tell you how many ways I do not like this. And this is characteristic of our failure to plan strategically and to put this on a list with other things. We're not even taking the time to get the results from a survey about facilities and parks that we're spending $100,000 on. So come on, when are we going to start doing things differently? And I'm sorry that I'm sounding a little bit like the first person who was speaking in public comment this afternoon. It seems like this morning. That's how I feel about it.
Counselor Katarina and then Counselor Anderson.
This is to the manager. community services, the last I knew was, well, they, even though they aren't breaking even, so to speak, they are pretty much self-sufficient. I mean, they're with their fees and whatever. In other words, they're making income that's offsetting a lot of expenses.
Yeah, they've been hovering around 90% self-funded. The remainder is simply captured costs that will never, stranded costs that we'll never capture. It
Sure.
really has to do with grounds maintenance, a relationship with the school. So I think we do a decent job through user fees to cover the majority of those fees, but there certainly is some taxpayer support as well.
Okay, I just wanted that brought forward because I think people forget that. Thank you.
Counselor Anderson.
Yeah, you know, I hear what Counselor Hamel is saying, and I know we're hoping potentially to do some sort of facilities workshop, hopefully in the future, where I hope we can kind of talk a little bit more about how we can, you know, go down the path that he's suggesting. But I think at this point, you know, this particular facility is doing a lot of good for the community. I think Todd has shown with more space what he can deliver on in terms of programming. I do have concerns about the long-term nature and decision around this. I feel like there is kind of a plan, but I don't think there's like a true plan. And I think as a council, we have to be looking at this, not just in the lens of community service and their needs, but all of the facilities needs within the community that we have to prioritize and make sure that we're looking at holistically. So while I'm supportive of this tonight moving forward, because I think there's a real need for it, I do think we need to kind of dig in a little bit more and have that big facilities conversation. I know it was a goal this year that we support the community center and that we look at the schools and look at facilities even more generally. So I just hope we, to Councilor Hamel's concerns, figure out a path forward to work on that as a council.
Not to steal your thunder, but you do have a July workshop
Yes.
planned on just that
That's the
topic.
hope. Yeah, and I think this particular topic should be one that we consider and explore through the lens of, we're going to have a community services, or part of it is a community center. What does that mean for the hub? What's the exit strategy? I think those are the types of things that we should be in that workshop really exploring and thinking about. How do we do that in a more systematic way going forward?
Counselor Seiler?
Lots of great points have already been made. So I'll just say, I think, you know, personally, I'm conditionally supportive. I understand that we are in a position where Todd has built some tremendous programming utilizing the hub. It's not a daycare facility. He has gone so far above and beyond the programming that was offered as an emergency during COVID. It's where all of our adult programs are happening. And I know that he services a wide umbrella of the community. And I think our role as counselors and as a town in general is to provide services, and to provide services that that genuinely enhance people's lives. And I just can't see a single thing that Todd does that doesn't enhance the life of those of us who live in town. And so I am 100% supportive of this lease space, because we don't have an alternative right now. And I am completely unwilling to entertain conversation where we would reduce the services that Todd is providing right now.
Thank you. Yeah, I fully support this as well. You know, I don't think we've given them enough credit, community services staff, for what they've done over the past couple of years to help us through the pandemic. I mean, you've got supervisors running daycare. They've been extremely efficient with very limited resources, very limited staffing, right? They're hitting the same troubles with staffing that everybody else is. They've been heroes. And the thought of yanking the 1 cent, this is someplace where they can now, hopefully a layer of consistency that they can add, that might help with staff recruiting, might help with staff retainment. Let them get settled, continue work so they can focus on programming and what the future might hold. I just think there's a lot of benefits. And then, being a math guy, you're going to lose money if you shut this facility down. I would bet money on it, whether it's through staff costs, turnover costs, or the programming that you're going to lose that you charge a fee for. The community services pays for itself. That flat out, no other department does. They cut the lawn for the schools and they don't get compensated for it. That's why they lose money. You cut this out, you're going to cut an expense, you're going to cut more revenue, I think. So with that, I support it.
Well, I just want to make one more comment. No one was suggesting we shut the place down. There was a motion to consider extending the lease for a year rather than 3 years. Okay, that was the discussion. So, nobody's proposing that we, yank services or do something extreme like that. That was not my recollection of the discussion. And I just think that, the way that we make decisions of this size and shape so often, this is not a very good reflection on us. We're not very planful, thoughtful. It looks like a last minute lob, and frankly, I have a hard time defending it when people ask me questions. And I'm not sure. I mean, I heard the thing about services. We want to provide high value services. Survey tells us what services those are, but there is a core of services that we should be providing. And I'm not sure it extends to include daycare or whatever the services are there. I think there are things core to the town, providing great schools, removing, the trash and taking care of snow removal and, and doing other things that, are direct to the core of a municipality. I just think that some of the stuff that we're doing here is not really in that vein. So that's my feeling about it. And, I'm willing to follow the wishes of the council because I don't have any other choice. So thank you.
Just, it's worth noting, somewhat ironically, Todd Souza is not with us tonight because he is in Colorado in kind of an immersion workshop specifically designed around community center facilities, not just amenities, but operations. And I think they're visiting 14 different facilities. So I'm hopeful that he's going to bring back some good ideas that we can build upon. And of course, we had that committee work that I think is still of great value and relevance as well.
Excellent. Tony, would you call the roll, please?
Council Snyder,
Yes.
Council Anderson,
Yes.
Council Johnson,
Yes.
Council Katarina,
Yes.
Council Hamel,
No.
and Chairman Pucci.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you, everybody. Next is order number 22-068. Act on the request from the town manager to authorize the use of ARPA funds for the IT department to purchase equipment in an amount not to exceed $9,203.75. Tom.
Yeah, I come hat in hand. I have been probably 6 months remiss in bringing this matter to you. The fact is, these technology investments were made, some back in FY21 and others in FY22, really preparing for the pandemic. These were essential things. This is the initial Zoom licenses to allow what we're still doing now, and the OWL technology that we've all come to appreciate its value. So this is clearly qualifies for ARPA funds. I was reminded of this as I went through the budget and identified additional things through the budget process. And so forgive me for being, bring this sooner. This will essentially reimburse us for expenses that we've already incurred.
Any questions for Tom? Any members of the public that would like to speak to this? Do I have a motion?
So
Hand
moved.
up. There's a.
Oh,
I was gonna say,
sorry.
Allison.
You caught
can-
me off guard.
Allison, you can unmute yourself and speak.
Allison, are you there? I know. I can't see anything, so she's gone.
Yes.
Okay.
Not there.
We can only assume she's supportive.
I would imagine. Okay, do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second? Okay. Any discussion? All those in favor? It's unanimous. Thank you. Thank you. No non-action items, standing and special committee reports and liaison reports. Does anybody have any? Counselor Seiler.
Yeah, I'll be super quick. On Monday night, I don't have my calendar, so somebody help me out with the dates. What's Monday? The 13th, the Conservation Commission and the Sustainability Committee are holding a joint meeting to discuss some of the goals that they would like to see the town council take up in terms of instituting new ordinances or setting parameters for potential exemption requests, things like that. And so it's a brainstorming session for those two groups to kind of align their priorities and maybe bring something forward to the council. So that's happening on Monday at 6. And then I'll plug Counselor Corner Live, which is happening on Thursday, the 16th. Thank you. I can't even attempt to. Thursday, the 16th?
Yeah.
Okay, at 6:30. And Counselor Anderson and I will be hosting that, and it's here in Chambers. And the format is similar to last time. It's a loose discussion between counselors and the community. We have no set agenda. We would just love to hear what the community has to say on the topic of conservation and land conservation and sustainability in Scarborough.
Counselor Anderson.
So just, if you have time, the school did a community forum this week where they really just presented how they're going about site selection, which I know Tom, April and I have been very much involved in, but this was just their opportunity to kind of share with the public how they're going through that process. So if you guys are interested in just understanding a little bit more about the criteria, the decisions, how the committee is kind of working towards identifying the right properties potentially for use, that's what we're going through. There was no sharing which properties are for consideration because of, trying to protect the interest of the negotiations that could come forward in the future. But, in case anybody's interested, that should be available online for people to watch.
Counselor Johnson.
I'll make it short and sweet. Councilor Anderson and I did the Let's Talk Scarborough last night at the library, and it was moderated by
Scarborough Community Connections.
Thank you. And I do believe we had 20 people sign up. I'm not quite sure how many people showed up, but it was good. And we definitely made a commitment to do more. It was very engaging. It was more of a conversation. It was great. And I know this is really going to break your guys' heart, but I am not here next week. I am going up into the mountains with my dog to zen out. So,
Serenity now.
serenity now. So, take care of the people's business while I'm gone. I'm sure you will.
Any others? Any counselor comments? Counselor Katarina.
Yeah, charter. Next week, we'll start the workshop at 5:30. I'm looking at Liam and yeah, and basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring forward the charter commission changes that were recommended, and we'll just go down through them, boom, boom, boom. But I have appreciated getting information from folks who've done their homework and given me, because it will help us as we converse. So I think that to me, the goal is to have a discussion, and if we can eliminate things right away, say, no, look next, so that's how I would like to do it, just so that we've got a format for how to move forward. Tony, do you have anything else to add? Anything?
Charter?
No, to anything that you'd
Yes,
like?
elections.
No, well, that's what I was gonna say. So, the election, just because I have a vested interest in this, is Tuesday, the 14th of June, which is next Tuesday. I can't believe it's already here. Absentee ballots are available through tomorrow. What time tomorrow? Regular business hours, so 4 o'clock. So you can come in and vote in person or pick up your absentee. After that, you have to have a special reason. You can drop off absentees you've already taken at any time, up to 8 o'clock on June the 14th. So turnout has been extremely low. I'm very disappointed. I want to remind the people at home that we not only have a primary that yours truly happens to be involved in, but we have town council seat open and we have a school budget. And it's like, hello, where are you guys? So how many have voted? How many have turned out?
We've issued 1,168, I believe, and we've gotten back just over 800.
Which is really low for Scarborough. So come on, get with it.
Yeah.
Jonathan.
I just want to add,
Yeah.
also on the ballot, which again, we talked about at the second read for the budget. But again, it still surprised me when I saw it on the ballot
Oh,
was
right.
the fact that people are deciding whether or not we continue to vote on the school
School
budget going
budget.
forward,
Yes,
which,
thank you.
which again is a state required
Right, every 3 years.
mandate that we do every 3 years. And so again, like, I think
Thank
we
you.
just haven't necessarily made that as visible or as known because there's so many other important things on there. But I think I just wanted to highlight that.
Thank you. And I did the same thing. I looked at the ballot and went, oh.
So the town did a great special bulletin on the election.
Yes.
Is there any opportunity to redo that one and remind people what's on the ballot? Like the small question of whether or not you want to continue to vote on the school budget?
I believe Allison is going to do another push.
Oh,
That was excellent.
That's already- we
It was
talked
May,
about it.
the original one was May. I went through it again. I thought, oh, this is great, so that's awesome. And I did have a question. So you can drop off ballots, but what about, can I take absentees and drop them off with neighbors and stuff like that for them to turn back in? No, I don't think so. I thought I'd ask.
No.
Not unless you're married.
Yeah,
Unless you have
sure.
permission.
Anyway, thank you. That's it.
That's all I had, vote. But also, I don't remember where I read this, but I thought I'd mention it tonight anyways, but I think it was through the material that you provided or doing research similar, but part of Warren Woods, there was land earmarked for fields for a park.
Yes.
Like 15 to 20 acres. And I think, I had never heard of it until I came across it recently. So I just thought I'd refresh that, remind everybody of that.
Just don't allow a wedding venue there.
There you go. All right, fair enough. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
Second.
All those in favor? It's unanimous. Thank you, everybody. Have a great night.
This was a long meeting.